I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, we're very pleased to be talking to Sarah Houston. She's Executive Director of Protect Our Aquifer, along with Bruce Newman, who's an attorney, a musician, a producer, and also involved in a benefit to benefit Protect Our Aquifer. So stay with us for a conversation with Sarah and Bruce. Thanks, both of you. Sarah, I know you from behind the headlines.
Yeah,
and we're not going to talk wonky sediment layer protection and holes, although probably we should. It's no less important over here. But we will talk a little bit about what Protect Our Aquifer does. And let's just do the 20-second you're stuck in an elevator. People say, well, it's Protect Our Aquifer, and why does it exist? And we'll get into a little more of that.
Sure. Yeah, so Protect Our Aquifer, our mission is to protect, preserve, and conserve the Memphis Sand Aquifer. It is our sole source of drinking water here in Memphis and honestly the greater Shelby County area. And we really don't have many long-term groundwater protections. So we're thinking about the short term, trying to, make sure any threats that are coming to head, we can mitigate those. But then also thinking long term, how do we have sustainable, clean drinking water far into the future?
That was good. Have you done that before? Have you done the 30 seconds just a couple
times? And people have the opportunity to get stuck in an elevator with us. So,
and that's what happens. And Bruce, you've done for what now? 30 years, Acoustic Sunday Live.
Yeah.
Talk about what that is and then segue into this benefit.
Sure. So 30 years ago, through my work as a lawyer representing artists, mostly in the folk Americana space, decided to use those contacts to start doing concerts for different nonprofits. And the last 6 of them have been for Protect Our Aquifer. And that's where we are 30 years later.
The upcoming event will be Sunday, December 15th, 7 p.m., First Congo. Do people need to get tickets?
Yes. AcousticSundayLive.com.
Okay.
They can just click on there and get them.
Okay. And the tickets are to benefit Protect Our Aquifer and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who all will be playing?
So this year we have a mixture of blues and folk. Shakura Saida is one of the premier Canadian blues singers, award-winning. Steve Forbert, who most people know as a major singer-songwriter with some hits from 1970s. Tim Easton is from Nashville. He's a singer-songwriter. And Tom Rush is an iconic folk singer back from Greenwich Village. And he did our show actually 25 years ago, and I've been bugging him to come back to Memphis.
All right.
But he always had a conflict. So this year we actually moved the concert 1 week forward to accommodate Tom Rush.
I got you. Again, that's Sunday, December 15th, 7 p.m. at First Congo. The Aquifer, I can't help talk some of the wonky stuff. It is always amazing to me when we've talked before, when Daily Memphian, we write, and others, the Aquifer, and it's sort of obviously always been there or been there for many millennia. But it kind of comes to the fore in the last decade when suddenly there's realization. Was it the Allen plant, really, the new replacement power plant that TVA was building, and they're going to pull water directly from the aquifer? And I remember a lot of people, whether or not you thought it was a good idea, there was this realization, wait, you can just do that? Like you literally can put a drill in your backyard and have a well or a power plant. And that is completely, or at the time was completely pretty much fine.
Right.
How much is it? That's a decade ago, right?
Yeah, it was 7-8 years ago almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How much have things changed in that time?
I like to say a lot has changed. That particular instance, it wasn't just that they were going to drill the wells, it's they were drilling them across the street from an unlined coal ash pit. So there was concerns with pulling down arsenic, lead, fluoride, stuff you don't want in your water supply. And since then, we actually amended our local wells regulations to say, hey, if you're this close to contamination, you can't drill a well. Or if it's a well this big, a Class A well, you have to go before the groundwater board. So it has to have a public say versus making sure your paperwork's filled out right, rubber stamp. So some really good things have happened, but managing groundwater is a tricky thing, and there's no federal laws really doing it. So it's all up to local governments. And, I think everybody in Memphis, has had a lot of pride about their water for a long time. Everybody knows 2,000-year-old water, artesian wells. But it's not something you can really go visit. You can go visit the Wolf River.
You should start doing tours.
Right,
you should do tours.
We could just shrink ourselves, little microscopic beings, go into the sand.
No bad ideas.
And so I think that this, this moment in time is really new for Memphians in the sense that they're having so much more of a direct connection to it and understanding what it really is in a way that we just historically haven't. And I think that brings a lot of hope for how we can think forward together and really benefit everybody.
We'll have to, I'm going to get Bruce back in, but we'll have to come to XAI and the Greywater plant and so on.
Yeah.
But for you, Bruce, why this? What drew you to take the show you've been doing for 30 years and say, hey, we're not only going to do a benefit, we've now done the last six will be for Protect Our Aquifer.
So, being friends with Ward, I was involved.
Ward Archer?
Ward
He's involved
Archer.
with this?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Ward, let me say who Ward is. Ward Archer, who is a friend of the, I don't know if he's ever been on this show. He's been on this show. He's been on Behind the Headlines. He's been, among other things, Archer Malmo. His father started that. He then Archer Records. He has been involved in many nonprofits and community efforts in town. And he's just a generally good guy. He's one of the part owners of Contemporary Media, Memphis Magazine, Flyer. How do you know Ward?
So we've been friends for many years, and when he started this organization, I acted as the attorney to set it up.
Okay.
And so I was sort of involved in the beginning, and I kind of felt it's the most apolitical issue, right? Doesn't matter how you vote, but water is just an important thing for everyone. It's life. So we decided we were at a turning point as to where these proceeds would go. As far as the concert that we were doing 7 years ago, and we decided to move it on to this .org. It was a gimme.
Yeah. And you will perform also? You're a musician.
No,
you're not.
I don't. No,
okay,
I'm a songwriter.
You're a songwriter. Okay, well, that's okay. Broadly speaking, I think of that as being a musician, but no, it's a songwriter.
Yeah. No, we leave this to the professionals.
Okay. All right. We're talking about water. I want to come back because it's just so top of mind for people. XAI and this, I guess, I don't know where you would say the commitment of XAI, which is the Elon Musk company that's built a supercomputer on President's Island, not far from the power plant that we were just talking about.
Correct.
And there's some kind of level of agreement that XAI will build a greywater plant. This has been something you all have certainly advocated for. Many others have advocated for back to when the TVA plant was being built.
Correct.
Right? There's no construction. Well, there might be construction as of today. They move pretty fast. Are you happy about the direction this is going?
Mm-hmm. Man, what a bingo card I didn't have this year with Elon Musk entering the picture. We are really excited. First, from these, initial talks with Mayor Young, President McGowan, MLGW CEO, and others, behind closed doors getting this deal done, they came out right out the bat saying, you really don't need to drill a well. We know you're going to need 1 million gallons of water, but you should help us get this water reuse, this gray water facility started up. Because literally the XAI is next door to our city's southern wastewater treatment plant. They all are in the same little nook of Memphis where TVA, XAI, wastewater plant all together. So you couldn't have a better physical proximity. And so we were really pleased that day one of announcement, this water reuse gray water facility entered the chat. I mean, it was the first time we ever saw saw MLGW publicly state their support for this facility. And so XAI has, continued that message and has actually drafted up engineering plans, sent those to our state regulators at TDEC, and they are working through the permitting process right now. It's not available for public comment yet, but we are seeing this thing move forward. And TVA, for the first time ever on record, CEO Jeff Lyash stated last week that if water quality is right, they're going to join this facility, which has been, like you said, our long-term goal pretty much since day one. They're straining our aquifer and they're straining our water infrastructure. And this could be a win-win-win in a lot of ways.
And isn't the steel plant, Nucor Steel, is a possible user, and they're a big user of water down there?
Correct. Yeah, so they're looking at about a 10 million gallon per day capacity, which would serve the needs for all of these.
And gray water, again, for those who don't listen to, read Daily Memphian or follow you all, is take the wastewater water, which otherwise goes into the river. It's been cleaned, but isn't purified for drinking, but it's fine to go in the river. Mm-hmm. take that, purify it more, clean it up more, get it ready for the really high quality water they need to put through their computers, their steel plant, their power plant.
Exactly, because if you have that lower quality, it's going to gunk it up. It's kind of scale. So you do need that additional treatment process. And that's what this is, building that additional treatment process specifically for that 10 million gallons for these industrial users. Doesn't have to be drinking water quality, but it's got to be better than what we're putting into the river.
Okay. Let me do a little housekeeping and come back and talk to you more about all that sort of stuff. But I'll remind everyone, this is Eric Barnes, and I'm hosting The Sidebar. We've got Sarah Houston today from Protect Our Aquifer, along with Bruce Newman, who is an attorney, a songwriter, and also a producer. And their event to benefit Protect Our Aquifer, the concert to Protect Our Aquifer, is coming up Sunday, December 15th. 7 p.m. at First Congo. You got to get tickets in advance, I think, or tickets at the door.
Well, we'd prefer if people would get them in advance.
And one more time where people can get tickets.
AcousticSundayLive.com.
The Sidebar airs every Thursday at 11:30 on WYXR 91.7, focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. But it's not just a radio show. It's one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Memphis Grizzlies podcast with Drew Hill and Chris Harrington. We also have our Memphis Tigers podcast has come back with John Martin, Parth, and Frank. And we also have Soundbites, hosted by Jennifer Chandler. That one also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11. And this week, the week this airs, because we're pre-taping this, Jennifer Chandler did a show on the Coffee Expo. I'm looking at Natalie Van Gundy to make sure I get this right, which also the Coffee Expo is benefiting Protect Our Aquifer. So, we just have synergy. That's what we aim for, right? We, in all our podcasts, have synergy. We also produce the podcast version of Behind the Headlines, the TV show we produce with the folks at WKNO every week. And you have been, Sarah, how many times have you been on Behind the Headlines? Come on.
Twice, only twice.
What?
But our
That's
science
not
director,
true.
It's true.
That's not true. I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
bring
a
me back
lie.
anytime. I'm ready. Our science director, Dr. Scott Schaefer-Knocker, came on this summer with President
You came
McGowan.
on before, totally digressing here. You came on before when you were back at Caesar.
When I was at Caesar, I was in the background with Dr. Waldron, and so I was cheerleader from the side, giving them hand signals, but I wasn't on camera.
No, there's only one person who's ever done that. That will go unnamed. That's when we finally wrap up Behind the Headlines. There'll be one of the stories from Behind the Headlines. Behind the Headlines, there will be many, many people watching.
The inception of Behind the Headlines.
You've only been on twice. I don't think that's right.
I'm ready.
Anyway, so that is also available as a podcast at Daily Memphian. All of our podcasts, everything I was just talking about, are available on the Daily Memphian site, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can get this show and Soundbites at WYXR.org or download the WYXR app. All the WYXR shows, talk and music, are available there. Do consider becoming a supporter of WYXR. It's nonprofit, listener-supported radio. You can do a one-off donation. You can become a member and get all kinds of benefits. And if you're not a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, do consider becoming one. We are the largest newsroom in the area. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, just had our 6th anniversary. So consider subscribing, please. On the Sidebar recently, we had David Yancey, an artist, a tattoo artist. He's got a lounge club that he's opening up on Broad. It was really interesting. He's a really interesting guy. He got me, or I guess I volunteered. I wanted to talk about my tattoo, and he offered to cover my tattoo, which I thought was really funny. I didn't take him up on that. We also recently had Laura Chilton, a writer, and a musician, Greg Cartwright. Really good shows that you can get in the archives. I mentioned Behind the Headlines. Coming up soon, we think we have Bakara Malden from MATA. Although they've got a lot going on over there, so she's had to reschedule once. So we hope to get her on and talk about all things MATA, what happened and where it goes from here. We've also got in a few weeks, CJ Davis, the police director, is coming on. And this week, a show on workforce will be this week, and various efforts, mostly through U of M, but different types of efforts around workforce development. Last bit of housekeeping, our commercial real estate seminar is coming up December 5th at 3 p.m. at the Botanic Garden. We'll be talking about all kind of elements of commercial real estate. There's usually 200-300 people there. It's a surprisingly interesting event, even if you're not in commercial real estate. More forecasts and trends. Everyone loves a forecast. Everyone loves a trend. Everyone loves a pie chart. It's a really good event though. Again, just if you're remotely interested in what's going on in Memphis, it's good. And Rick Shadiak of ALSAC will be there talking about just the huge amount of construction and development and investment that ALSAC St. Jude is making in Memphis. So long housekeeping with lots of digressions today. Let me go back to you, Bruce. You also host a folk show on Weevil. And you jokingly asked me before, and can I mention that? And of course you can mention that. I mean, all things music in Memphis is great. Talk about the show.
So I've been doing the show for about 15 years. Again, basically telling stories about and playing music from artists that I've represented over the years. And some of them are pretty iconic folk singers. Over the years, I've represented Dave Van Ronk and Dave Bromberg and Tom Rush. And so the show has been sort of a natural place to play their music and tell personal stories about it. So I've been doing that for about 15 years. Maybe another 3 years before where I was subbing for the guy before. So.
Yeah. When does it air, and can people get the archives and so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. and they do archive them for a period. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and that's at WEVL.
Yes.
Weevil. So well, good.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for starting Acoustic Sunday Live 30 years ago?
Well, I'm from New York originally, and when I moved here and moved back, my wife is from Memphis, but when we moved back 30 years ago, it was just a thing about giving back to the community. I was involved with music back then and sort of used those connections to do our first concert, which was 30 years ago, and it was a tribute to Woody Guthrie, the iconic folk singer, and we had Odetta, and we had Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Tom Rush and Tom Paxton, and so these are all people who I knew in the business, and a lot of them had not been to Memphis for many years, and they decided to come and do that very first concert.
Yeah, and where was the first one?
It was at Theater Memphis.
Theater Memphis on Poplar.
Yes.
Yeah, not over at, because they moved. Okay.
Right. It was over there.
It was on Poplar.
And then we moved it around over the years. It was at I think, where was it before? It was at St. John's Church in Midtown. Okay. And so we've moved it around, but it's been pretty stable now at First Congo, they've been great. They've been so open for us to come over there and mess up their Sundays.
But they really are kind of, it's First Congregational Church, and if you didn't live in Memphis, you would think, oh, it's a church, but it's really a community gathering point, right? I don't want to say community center because that seems not, I don't want to diminish community centers, but I don't even think that captures everything they do.
But they're also so about the cause,
right?
I think one of the reasons they embraced us is because they knew that it was a cause that they could all get their arms around. And
yeah. Speaking of the cause, back to you, Sarah. Y'all are a nonprofit 501c3. You're an advocacy group. We don't have authority over this thing, and you don't have funding beyond. How are you? I actually have never asked you this in all the many, many times you've been on Behind the Headlines.
We've been planting money trees everywhere.
We should do that the Daily Memphian should do that. I should have thought of that 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But how are you supported?
Yeah. So we are a 501c3. So we have a lot of individual donors, we've got major donors, and then grant funding. So we've been supported by the Hyde Foundation. We just got our first ever CC Foundation grant. And then we've been looking to national grants as well. So it has been, fundraising is always a part of, being a 501c3 nonprofit. When I came on as the first executive director in 2021, that was really our first time to do true outright campaign fundraising. Yeah. And we had a really great response at the beginning. It was right during Byhalia Pipeline. It had just been canceled.
Oh, right,
it was kind of before and then after.
Yes.
So that was the beginning of my official tenure in this position. And then, it's really about connecting with folks that understand that, like Bruce was saying, this really is apolitical. This is something that everyone deserves, clean drinking water, and it affects industry, business, communities, everybody. And so we're lucky to have a lot of really great funders, grantors, and anyone listening can be an amazing donor to Protect Our Aquifer. So we would love to have you. And we just are launching the Aquifer Advocate Circle for folks donating $500 and more every year. We're going to have 2 little VIP cocktail parties and also quarterly updates, kind of the inside scoop of what's going on. So we would love to have you join.
Yeah. Are there groups that you were originally a board member? I joked
Correct.
you were at Caesar. You were at the University of Memphis. What, I said Caesar. I should explain that because people are like, "What? She's into Roman stuff? Like, what is Eric talking about?"
The Center for Applied Earth Science and Engineering Research.
I remember having to say that on the show and messing it up, even though it was written down in front of me.
Yes. So I was there for a little over 3 years as the Associate Director of Education Outreach. So a lot of the really great science they do, trying to make that a little bit more discernible, understandable. But then, joined the POA board in 2020 and was there for about a year and has really recognized the need for advocacy to put things into implementation, to make the change happen. Science is critical. Science is great. But a lot of times it sits on a shelf and doesn't get used. And so how do we really make that part of how we manage this asset?
Were there other groups that, again, Ward started this with others, and then you were an early board member. Did you all look at other? There aren't a ton of cities of Memphis size that get their water from an aquifer, right?
Right. We are the largest city that solely relies on an aquifer.
And did you look at other places and say, hey, they did it right, or they did it wrong, or that? And you don't have to name the people who did it wrong, but I'm just kind of curious. Well, I just think about we're 6 years old, Daily Memphian, so that's like 7 years for me, and it's this 7.5. God. We looked at models, and sort of. I'm curious where else you looked.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the biggest, I guess, poster child that our board really looked to is called the Edwards Aquifer Authority. So it's actually in Central Texas, created by the Texas State Legislature, and it was it's a I believe 8-county authority, and they do the well permitting and the strategies and the forward looking and all this stuff. But they're an actual governmental authority.
Yeah, I was going to say,
And so that was really kind of our guiding light. And then, I come in and I'm like, y'all, people don't even know what an aquifer is. We kind of recognize where the community is. We can't just hop to creating an authority, and also this is Tennessee. What are we thinking here? So,
but they did it in Texas, which actually is interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So that has been a big model for really thinking about what type of protection programs they have. And so that's where when we think about management strategies, we think about, good things that work in that space. That's where we've done a lot of research, and, we actually we share a board member with them. They have an elected board. And so Deb Carrington, she's from northern Mississippi. Her sister is a local realtor here in Memphis, but she's been in San Antonio, Texas for a couple decades. Serves on the board of Edwards Aquifer Authority and also with Protect Our Aquifer. So she's kind of our direct line of communication there. But then otherwise, we've been looking at other nonprofits that kind of try to straddle that education core with that, advocacy implementation. And so there are a lot of organizations that do that well and that don't do that so well. And so that is kind of the models that we've been looking into.
Shifting back to Bruce, again, the event is Sunday, December 15th, 7 p.m. at First Congo. Go to, I'm going to get it, Acoustic Sunday. I'm reading it upside down, acousticsundaylive.com to get tickets in advance at First Congo. I didn't know you were, I should have, but I didn't know until we were talking before we started recording that you were an entertainment lawyer. How has that all changed over however many decades now you've been doing that?
When I went to law school, I sort of specialized in it when I was in law school in New York. So I've been doing it a long time. When I came to Memphis, interesting, the business had died. Stax had closed, Sun had closed. All the lawyers had moved to Nashville, including the iconic lawyer Jim Zumwalt had moved to Nashville. So when I got here in '89, I was the last man standing. So I sort of have benefited from the resurgence of the music industry in general. Of course, the businesses had left Memphis, so we're still struggling. But I've seen just sort of the move to streaming, which has been very interesting. It's a very difficult business model for musicians, as we all know. So that's been kind of interesting, trying to figure out how you can make a living doing this full time. That's been quite interesting.
I've interviewed a bunch of musicians, probably not enough, but a bunch. And it is fascinating. Even musicians who have big names, and you can tell, not that, I don't want to say that they're struggling, but you're piecing together the income with touring, with selling albums, with, the sort of resurgence of vinyl, of just all these different efforts to piece together an income. It's a more, I think, as a music fan, you have this really linear notion of they do good work, and if they break through, they begin to make money, and then they begin to make more money. But it's much more of a struggle.
It's a big struggle. When somebody comes to my office and we sit in the conference room and they're a newbie, I'll say, I just want you to know this is your chance of making this full time, and I'll put a decimal point and 0, 0, 0, because I want them to do it with eyes wide open.
Yeah.
And if they're willing to do that, it's going to be about the love of what you're doing for a living, because it is extremely difficult to make a living full time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's rare.
Just a couple minutes left. What instrument do you play, Sarah?
Wasn't ever my forte. My mom made me take some piano lessons. I was a little too rowdy to sit down and do that. I played French horn in 6th and 7th grade. That was.
Are you performing on December 15th in First Conga?
Thankfully for everyone, no, I will not be. I don't think Bruce
you're the opening act. Did you know that? Right. Actually, the opening act, I might add, is Marcella Simeon and Ann Harris, who's a violin player.
So excited for that. Well, I do, want to speak on the concert briefly. As Bruce said, this is a lot of like folk and blues music, and not necessarily like my generation's music. And the first time going to this concert, I didn't like totally know what to expect. But it is just a beautiful, wonderful experience. I don't know if it's like the Sunday night evening magic, but the way that it's set up, all the musicians share a stage together. And it's this really cool kind of camaraderie. It's very organic feeling. It's a really fun experience where you really get a sense of the magic of this performance in a way that's not like opening act, headliner, close. And you get to see the personalities of the musicians really well too. So, even if you haven't heard of any of these headliners or anybody, totally recommend you coming out and joining us, because it is just a magical little experience. And we have a lot of fun, working with Bruce and his wife Barbara putting this together. This is a labor of love for them, and it is just a really, really cool event.
It's modeled after the old Greenwich Village hootenannies, where they get on stage and swap songs.
It's so fun. I got to say that.
Just about out of time. Again, learn more at Acoustic Sunday Live. You can learn more at protectouraquifer.org.
You guys
got that. That's right. There wasn't another Protect Our Aquifer
Nailed it.
When you started. Before I go, Sarah, for people, I always try to ask the first concert you went to.
Oh, Matchbox 20.
Nice. Where was that?
That was in the Woodlands, Texas, north of Houston.
And what kind of venue?
It's like half grassy, half seated.
Okay.
So we were on the grassy section with I was in 5th grade with my girlfriend, her family, and we had the picnic blanket and Matchbox 20, baby.
What first concert you went to with your own money? You know what I mean? Like, give or take.
Oh, good question. I don't even know if I know off the top of my head. Like that would kind of like peaked open my interest in just live music. So I live near Beale Street, and I just pop in there all the time just to feel it. Yeah. It just feels good.
And Bruce, this week,
1970, Elton John at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, for the win!
Nice. Epic.
That's pretty. Was that before Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, or?
That was before Yellow Brick Road. Yeah.
So
wow, that's really good.
Yeah,
that's a good. That's a first. That is definitely a first. Might be a first.
Well, that just shows my age.
Yeah.
But it shows how cool he is and knows good music too. I mean, like really he's good. With it.
That's no. I mean, that's pre-Disney Elton. I mean, that's a whole different thing. I mean, my God. That is, though, all the time we have this week. Sarah Houston and Bruce Newman, thank you very much for being here. Thank you all for joining us. If you missed any of the show, you can get the full episode at WYXR, The Daily Memphian, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.